We are very grateful to our sponsor this evening. More Able Than This is sponsored by the Music Department at Georgia College and State University. In addition to bachelor's degrees in music and in music therapy, including a BA plus MAT path to initial music teacher certification, GCSU offers an online master's degree in music education for certified teachers seeking to improve or expand their knowledge and skills, as well as a hybrid Master of Arts in Teaching degree for those seeking initial teacher certification in Georgia. We accept certified and licensed teachers from across the U.S., and Georgia certification is reciprocal with most other states. So don't let state boundaries deter you from applying. Apply now to start in spring or summer 2025. For more information about these degree programs, contact me at tina.holmes-davis@gcsu.edu. That's tina.holmes-davis@gcsu.edu. Welcome to More Able Than This, the podcast where we discuss everything related to disability and music education. More Able Than This is sponsored by the Music Department at Georgia College and State University, Georgia's designated public liberal arts university. Today we will be talking about community-based opportunities for musicians with disabilities with our special guest, Ms. Myrna Clayton. Ms. Clayton has degrees from Alabama A&M and Atlanta University, which she used to build a successful marketing career before becoming a professional singer. She is now commissioned by the United States State Department to represent American music at U.S. embassies abroad. She has also started a nonprofit organization, ShowAbility, Inc., that presents shows for artists and audiences with disabilities so that they might, too, experience the gift of music and the opportunity to share it. Currently, ShowAbility is creating a registry of artists with disabilities in Georgia and in the Southeast. Ms. Clayton believes that disability rights are human and civil rights. So, Ms. Clayton, will you tell us about how ShowAbility got started and how you took this path through marketing and singing to disability rights?
Thank you for asking that, and thank you for inviting me to be on your show. I really appreciate this. Wow, I love the name. And so I was just taken by the name. I was like, yes. So Tina, I got started in this space when I happened to be at a church singing. And while, there and enjoying the other singers, I happened to see a young boy, I guess he was around 10 or 11 years old, struggle to get up 3 steps into the church pulpit. Mm-hmm. I guess he had cerebral palsy because he had the arm canes. Mm-hmm. I did not know at the time. But Tina, when he started singing, he lit up the place. Oh my gosh. I forgot, and I'm sure everybody else forgot all about his challenge. And just kind of was just wow. And I didn't have the presence of mind at the time to, what's your name or any of that. I was just, oh, that was really cool. And I went on about my business. And then about 5 years later, he crossed my mind. And I said, he ought to be a teenager now. I bet he's killing it. I'd love to hear him today. Sure. And so I began asking musicians that I know tons of musicians, probably like you, singers, choir directors, yada, 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 whether that's corporate band in the school system, everywhere, venues, whatever genre. And nobody knew any singers with disabilities. Mm-hmm. Now, I have an MBA, and so my corporate background is in new product and new business development. And so I was trained on taking something from a concept to national launch. And so working in products, consumer packaged goods products. And so conceptually, that just did not make sense to me. I had no idea of the numbers, did not know the statistics at all. But it just didn't make intuitive sense to me that no one knew any singers with a disability. And so that's what sparked it. I'm sad I have yet to come across that young man, and he should be about 25 now. Mm-hmm. And I run across any young man with cerebral palsy, who sings, and that saddens me because I want to find him, because if he was amazing at 10 or 11,
Imagine.
imagine,
Yes.
imagine. Yes, 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 yes. So that's how the organization started, and it was originally the original name of it was Able To,
Mm-hmm.
and it was spelled ABEL and the number and the wrong and the number two, so Able To.
Uh-huh.
And again, with my business background, it's a functional name. When you hear it, you understand. And I made it difficult for people because I wanted to spell it ABEL and
Uh-huh.
not ALE. And that was because for me, as a believer, Abel's sacrifice was acceptable to the Lord, and so
Sure.
that's where I was with that spin on things. And I said, well, when you see the spelling, you understand, but when you hear it, you know what we're trying to do. And that got so many people so confused that that right around the pandemic, we had a marketing assessment done, and
Sure.
the decision was made to change the spelling to Able To, but there's an organization in the Northeast that's named Able To, that's spelled ABLE and the number two. Go figure. And
Yeah.
so we were already doing things under the name ShowAbility because our talent shows were called ShowAbility.
Okay.
So it's like we already using that name. It's a great name. And
Mm-hmm.
so it went from there.
Yeah. And it's also very indicative of what you do because you're showing ability.
Exactly. And so and we look, all of it's intentional. So show is all caps,
Sure.
so it's show ability, because we
Yeah.
need you to show your ability. Hello, it's time for the show to go on, and you need to be on that stage.
Yes, yes. And that's what we were talking about before we started recording. Dr. Bonnie Bonhoff, who was one of my first, I think she was the second guest I had on the podcast. She has cerebral palsy, and she's a classically trained vocalist. She sings a lot of opera. But it was difficult for her as a young person to get cast in the operas because though her voice was very appropriate, she needed a cane, so they had to be very careful to cast her in roles where she could use her cane. And, she and I presented a few years ago at the National Opera Association conference when it was in Salt Lake City. And one of the people who came to our presentation described casting a blind singer to be the queen of the night. And so what they did was they put her in a full mask so that, she had to be led, but to the audience, she just looked like she had to be led because she was in this mask. And then, her understudy was the one who guided her onto stage. And so they were able to accommodate her and allow her beautiful voice to be heard that way.
That is so fabulous. And
everybody does that.
The accommodation works.
Yes.
And if we're in the arts, then it's about creativity, and let's make it work. It always baffles me, especially in the arts, when people want to not be creative.
Well, and the first question.
Sorry.
No, you're good. The first question we always get is, how much time, money, energy, resource is it going to cost us to have you involved? And honestly, there's some, but I think that, when we get to the end of it, it's worth it.
We ShowAbility just did an accessibility below the line expo in October for National Disability Employment Awareness Month ending. And one of the things that we talked about, because we not only do stage and theater, but we also are dealing with film and folks in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. And one of the things that we expressed at the beginning when we started talking about this was disability is not an afterthought.
No.
And so it has to be discussed at every stage, but especially in the development stage. Because if you want to cast persons with disabilities, then that's in the development stage, so that you have the budget.
Yeah.
Just like if you need something else, you have a budget for, and there are things, costumes, outfits, crafty, all of that. it's in the budget. And so not only in the development stage, but also the pre-production, the production, the post-production, and the distribution.
Sure.
Because hello, disproportionately more of your audience members are going to be persons with disabilities. So you might accommodate them. And hello, the disability community has the largest of the minority populations, the largest discretionary spending power, $20 billion. And so that is nothing, that's larger than the Black and Latino population combined.
Okay, I didn't know that. So, yes. But I do, when I teach music for the exceptional child, I talk about the fact that we're in a catch-22 because since we don't allocate resources to disabled musicians, they don't feel welcome and they don't feel like, they should be there because there's nobody who looks like them there and we don't necessarily go after them. But because we don't, we will never have a population big enough to justify the allocation of the resources that we need.
I'm happy to see things changing, and it won't change without persons being bold enough to say, I'm good. Pick me.
Yeah.
Every artist has to do that. That's not unique to persons with disabilities. If you're good, then you want people to know that you're good, and you let. I don't know any corporation, let alone a person, that focuses on their weaknesses. They only focus on their strengths. And so I'm going to shine. And what I need you to focus on is my strength. And that's where people need to be. That's where I need to stay and demand that. And I realize it takes a lot. But as a Black person who gets discriminated against in 2024, it happens anyway. And so as a woman, we get discriminated against. And so, hello, it's not like it's unusual. It's we have to be tenacious, and we have to know that we have a gift and we have to share it.
Yes. So I'm new to ShowAbility. I've been digging through. I see that y'all have a choir.
Yes, it's an inclusive chorus. Yes.
And how does that work?
Wow. To become a member of the chorus, you have to audition. And I'm very candid. We're looking for non-Black members. I don't mince. The disability community is the most diverse. It fits every demographic that exists.
Yeah.
And I find that when my brown face shows up, someone may wrongly assumes that this is an organization for Black people. And it's like, no, this is an organization for persons with disabilities, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of culture and all of that. And so you audition to be a part of the inclusive chorus. And we're excited about all that's happening. We see now that chorus is really creating visibility for persons to embrace inclusion, because we feature singers with and without disabilities. And so they're together, and we performed at the High. We performed for the Atlanta Gladiators. We're now talking about performing for the Falcons and the Hawks and the Atlanta United. We decided last year that we wanted to do our own arrangement following the arrangement, but our own little panache to the national anthem, and then sing at sporting events, because Tina, our North Star is to be for the arts and entertainment industry what the Paralympics and the Special Olympics are in the sports industry. We want to showcase talent and excellence. And people get it when you say Paralympics and Special Olympics. It's like, I'm looking for those things that make people say, oh, because oftentimes when they hear disabilities, again, they're focusing what you can't do.
Yes, which is the opposite. Yes.
And when I start saying Paralympics, they're like, oh, then they get it.
Yes, which is actually the title of my podcast, came from some research I did early after my disability, when I was really trying to, because it's a weird day when they sit down and tell you that you're disabled. It's so, but then you focus on the disability. And then in order to continue with your life, you have to focus on the fact that you still have ability. So, yeah.
And that's so powerful, Tina. That it's you don't let what someone else labeled be a hindrance for you. You're like, okay, that's who I am now. That's that okay. Well,
But yes.
let's make it do what it do. Let's make it work.
Yeah, but then, like I tell people all the time, I would be ashamed of myself if I carved a path for me and left others behind. So, we're trying to make sure that everybody with disability who wants to do these things has an opportunity and a venue. So, yeah. So it sounds like you're choir and you do talent shows and I don't know what. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Yes, our chorus. Next year, we're going to actually be going into high schools and middle schools because we really, I'll use this word, sacred territory. We want to get at those that are younger that are being redirected from the arts.
Yes.
And we have not been able to crack that nut to get into the school systems. And also, when we say we're looking for students with disabilities, they immediately assume that it's those with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And I'm saying, no, it's those, not just those students, but we're looking for those with physical disabilities that are in the general population.
Sure.
And so they're like, so what we decided to do, because we were actually doing a pilot program, we received a grant to do a pilot program to get more students that with disabilities interested and exposed to the arts. And we were wanting to talk with middle school students, and that was a huge learning curve.
Yes.
I could talk a long time about that, which I won't. But the bottom line is we're now saying, okay, there's a different way to get into the schools. First of all, let's just go and show students, persons, and we're looking at the general population students, because students know other singers. What I found out, Tina, was when we would go to band directors or chorus instructors saying, do you have any students with disabilities? Do you know any students with disabilities? Guess what? They said, we don't recruit students. Students sign up.
Yes.
And so if students don't sign up, then the music teacher won't know the student that sings. I mean, even if they had a disability or not, they won't know.
Yeah. And
so, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay. I was just going to say, and if we don't encourage the confidence of the students, in middle school and high school, because that's when many of us, got the bug.
Yeah. Well, Julie Duty, who founded the United Sound Organization, said in a presentation at GMEA a few years ago that one of the biggest struggles they had in getting students with disability to sign up for band and orchestra with the United Sound program was that their parents didn't believe that they would actually be able to do it, because for so many years of their lives, these children have not been able to keep up with their peers. So even with this model dropped in, we have to show not just the parents, but also the student, or not just the students, but also the parents that they can do this.
That is exactly what I experienced. The first was trying to get through to the right person to ask where are the students. That was the first hurdle. And then not wanting to have an after school program at the school, because I was informed that when that happens, they take over your program. They pull students out of there, and so I was advised, no, don't go into the school system, have an external. And so, okay, I'm 100% dependent upon the parent then to get the child, the student there. And so you'll laugh at me. I then started asking, so what is the persona? What is the avatar of the booster parent? What's the avatar for those parents who have their students doing their UAA, where they travel all over, all over the country, paying their own money? What's the personality? What's the persona?
Sorry,
that's okay. What's the persona? The profile of that parent, because that's the parent that I'm looking for this student. That takes that type of parent who's willing to say, I don't see it, but if you think so, okay.
Hmm. Well, and I wonder sometimes if these parents who've had to fight for every opportunity and every educational opportunity don't just get worn down to the point where they just don't have any more to give.
Um,
But
my experience is, again, it's the parent type.
sure.
With all respect, because one of our board members has a child that's is nonverbal and has intellectual disabilities, but because she is outgoing, she
Hmm.
thinks that her daughter is going everywhere with her. Her daughter is a fashion model.
Yeah.
Okay, and so so it's very much so dependent upon those parents, and it's really that parent. Yes, there's a lot going on.
Hmm.
Yes. And that's not going to change. But wow, the spark of the enthusiasm is there and the opportunity is there. And so I get it. I've met so many parents, not just of young children, but parents who've been at it for a long time.
Hmm.
And one of our first artists is a young man who, God rest his soul, has passed away a few years ago. But he's a quadriplegic,
Uh-huh.
and he has such a jazzy voice, and but he looked like Willie Nelson. I say he looked like a big fat Willie Nelson, but he sounded like the jazz singer Aaron Neville. He was
Oh.
so amazing. And I actually, his parents, he was in his 50s,
Hmm.
parents in their 70s, and they're still making sure that he's going wherever he needs to go. I
Sure.
literally said he needs to audition for The Voice. They took him to Nashville to audition for The Voice.
See. All right. Well, yeah. But
And
that's
so
why
that,
I think, yeah, having this, this community thing, as well as, one of my big pushes with my graduate students who are teachers currently is to actually go out and recruit, some students that have, disability. And my husband teaches at the Autism Hub at his school, and he actually has many students with autism who are in his program. And, when you get students with various disability and you find out they're just like everybody else, then you get those good musicians, and then we have school and community opportunities.
I'm walking, and as you can see, because my battery's about to go dead, so it's like,
Oh,
so you're seeing all the different colors in my home.
that's right. My home's the same way. My daddy always says I look like I'm sponsored by Crayola.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, but that's why I like the fact we talked before about the fact that in the UK it seems to be that disability musicianship is very nonprofit driven, but in the United States we find that it's more driven by universities and schools and things like that. So it's nice to see that we have a nonprofit driven option here in Atlanta.
Well, thank you. I never knew that, actually. Um, I didn't know. There's a lot about this community I didn't know. But I'm discovering, because our biggest challenge even now is just funding. And I'm like, because sadly, Georgia is ranked number 50 in arts funding.
Uh-huh. I didn't know that.
It's a sad state in America. Georgia, with all of the arts and all of the things that are coming out of Georgia, we are ranked number 50. And someone had the audacity to say, well, that's because of agriculture. I said, well, so is Alabama and Mississippi. They're not 50.
Yeah, that's true.
So don't give me that excuse. But anyway, neither here nor there, I digress. But yes, we have so much um, opportunity, and our organization now refers to ourselves as a human services organization that uses arts as our platform
There you
for
go.
accessibility and visibility to
Mm-hmm.
change the career trajectory of artists
Mm-hmm.
and increase life possibilities. I have to tell you this crazy funny story, Tina. Our very first talent show, was at the Auburn Avenue Research Library in Atlanta. Why there? Because it was only public facility that was free to the public that had an accessible stage.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn Avenue Research Library had an accessible stage. No other place had an accessible stage. And I'm saying the Fox is not accessible. The Alliance is not accessible. I'm saying these places are not accessible. States. Go ahead. Sorry.
To clarify for people who don't know, an accessible stage needs to have wheelchair access onto the stage, to the stage area. Yes. Sorry.
Correct. It has a ramp.
Yes.
Or lift. Ideally a ramp.
Yeah.
And so because I'm having a talent show and I'm encouraging persons to come across the disability spectrum, I needed an accessible stage. Mm-hmm. And so that was the only place that I could have it. And while we're setting up and getting things ready, and of course people are coming in ready for, to enjoy the talent show, the security guard comes to me and says, "Ma'am, if you have one more wheelchair user, it's going to be a fire hazard." Tina, they had space for 3 wheelchairs. And I said, "Well, where are they supposed to go?" After some expletives, because, I got a potty mouth.
Oh, I would never.
I said, "Where are they supposed to go?" And he says, "I don't know, in the lobby, but they can't come in here." That's my first show. I wasn't thinking about the audience. I'm thinking about the show. And at that point, it hit me, whoa, you're going to have disproportionately more of your audience members are persons with disabilities. And so you've got to be thoughtful of ASL. You've got to be thoughtful of accessibility. You've got to be thoughtful of sensory. You've got to be thoughtful of all of that in addition to what the heck is going on stage.
Yes. And I have found as a concert goer, because of, I can walk and I can do those things, but because of my sensory overstimulation, I use a chair and, headphones and everything whenever I go to concerts. But because of the way ADA law affects venues, they don't have to have very many places that are accessible. And there are certain venues that I can't go to at all because they can't guarantee me wheelchair access to a seat. And, and it's understandable from the business point of view, but as a person who would like to go to a show at your, venue, then it becomes problematic.
And here's the thing, because my background's business, that's why I talk business, because I need for you to know that, oh, this is butts in the seats. This is tickets. You're missing out on 1/4 of the U.S. population. And if you add one family member to that, that's over half. It's 26% of the U.S. population have a disability, and that's those that identify. Okay. Now, if you add one family member to that, that's 52% of the U.S. population that's connected to the disability community. What? Oh, you need to have access. You need to be able to make it where we can attend.
Yeah, because I've missed out because I can't just go to a concert because my ability to use my body is linked to my stimulation. And so as I get overstimulated, I can't walk. And so I have to use my chair for those things.
Absolutely. And again, it's using those business terms like me saying the disability community has $21 billion discretionary spending power.
We would go if we were welcome. Yes.
Exactly. And if they knew that, they would then make it a part of it. Australia has a universal design in their building. Ours does not. Mm-hmm. And what we know for a fact, because of the ADA, that what benefits the disability community benefits
everyone. Yes.
It benefits everyone. Just prime example, any runner that the curb cuts on the sidewalks would not be there
without ADA.
Yeah,
and elevators too.
Hey, so how? But the challenge is people are not aware. Mm-hmm. And why aren't they aware? And I'm just going to put my thumb in this. I was going to say my big toe, but you can't see that. So my pinky finger. We've been taught from childhood not to point and not to stare. Mm. And so as a result,
We don't
We
see.
we don't see because we still hear those adults. I still hear the adults in my head, stop that, don't you point. And then that creates shame. That creates fear in the person to not even interact or engage because they don't want to mess up.
Yeah.
And so you have a whole population of people who are afraid to make a mistake because they're going to get in trouble. Even if there's nobody around, I know I hear that adult in my head, so that adult's going to get me.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. If the general population is fearful, is afraid of making a mistake.
Yeah.
And so what happens? Fight, meaning they're going to be mean and ugly, or flight, they're going to go away, or they freeze, they just kind of stare at you. Just
Sure.
stare. They don't know what to do.
Yeah. But so after that first experience, were you able to find a venue that was more accessible to your audience?
Oh yes, we had to. It was a search, but because there are not that many. The Auburn Amber Research Library renovated, and I was very vocal with the Atlanta Fulton County when they were renovating the libraries. I was very vocal, and so that venue has just made a step up. And there are a few venues in Atlanta, like the Buckhead Theater. It has an accessible stage. It has an accessible, all the seating is accessible. You have because you can move the chairs in and arrange them. And then the tech area, because that's the other piece. The tech area is accessible because you have tech persons. The tech areas, oh my gosh, they're in some little cut somewhere, it's just
Yeah,
not.
you have to climb down or climb up.
Right. And so to have an accessible tech area is an important part in the arts as well. And so the Buckhead Theater is definitely one of the few in Atlanta. But again, places that you would think they are not. And again, we've been pretty vocal about that, so much so that we were the catalyst behind Fulton County getting an NEA grant to do an assessment of accessibility at Fulton County area theaters. From an artist perspective, not an audience, because oftentimes they study accessibility for the audience, but not working artists and the staff. And so what I'm saying to you is confirmed by those numbers. By that project that was done, that accessibility is a huge problem.
Yes, and that's what Dr. Von Hoff told us too, is, as a performer with cerebral palsy, then sometimes she had great opportunity and sometimes she did not. And it depended on who she was working with and where.
And one of the things that I've found, and every artist has to do this, so including artists with disabilities, make people aware of your accommodations.
Sure.
And if they want you, they will make the accommodations for you. That's across the board. And that as we perfect our gift, as we perfect our talent, people are going to want to showcase your talent. And so there are so many persons who it's a struggle. I find now that because of that struggle, fewer and fewer people are speaking up and speaking out.
Sure. Yeah, you just get to the point where that's not for me.
Yes, and then the question is, well, who will do that? I've been asking the people in the ADA world, and I mean the federal.
Sure.
So who's replacing Judy Heumann? Who's stepping up in place for Judy Heumann? Because she was the one from the 70s, and people just kind of took that for granted. So where is the spokes? And they've named, people, but I don't know them. And so it's a matter of, hey, somewhat, if not you, who?
Yeah, well, and it's hard to fill somebody's shoes where we've kind of, especially since the 70s, that's been taken care of for us. And so it's hard to say, well, now I have to. And that's what I was saying too before we started about, the book I just released. I had 3 contributing authors who are also disabled musicians, but I invited more, and it wasn't always, people don't always want to identify as that, in that context, especially, the people who can pass as able, or, people who just haven't like let that sink in or whatever. And so, we respect their choices, but, some of us have to bring this out to the world, or people aren't going to realize that this is a thing.
I applaud you for this platform that you've created, because it is very much so necessary. It is very much so needed, and so you're a champion for so many people. There, even those that pass are able to benefit, even though they're not. I'll be kind of mean about it. Even though they're not doing anything to help it, because hello, you're benefiting and you're not helping the matter because you're not sharing. One of the things that I've experienced, and I know this may seem harsh, but it's real. And when I get casting requests, they're looking specifically for persons who are wheelchair users. They're looking for someone that has MS. They're specifically because, as you know, in theater, that's a cast. And you get mad when someone with disabilities is not playing their part.
That's true.
Well, don't get mad if they can't find any.
That's true.
You're not revealing that you have a disability. Mm-hmm. And so that that's the part that's available. And if there's nobody there and nobody's skilled at a certain skill level, because, in the arts, you have to have a certain skill level. No one wants to be patronized. Now, look, let's not be patronized here. No,
yeah.
And so if you don't self-identify, then don't get upset when opportunities don't come your way.
Sure. And then, able people are playing disabled characters.
Yes, because they can't find them, and you aren't yet brave enough. Because I think that as especially with those of us with talent, we have no choice. We've got to do
it. Sure.
There's a little energy within us that says, "Oh, I have to do this," and we find a way to make one. And so for those that are artists, that again, no one wants to be patronized, but also no one wants to be marginalized.
Yeah, and nobody wants to be left out. And that's what I found. Yeah, after I became disabled, I found that there really wasn't a place for me to step into as a musician with disability. So as I was building my path, I was like, well, I might as well leave a path for other people because, I have so many resources as a college professor that most people don't have. That, if I can't do it, then very few people will be able to do it.
That's amazing. Tell me about some of those resources that you have access to.
Well, for instance, my one-handed clarinet technically belongs to my university because I wrote grants, internal grants, to afford it. Because it was, by the time I bought the instrument and had it shipped and paid the tariffs because it was made in UK, it was about $10,000. And, although that's not unheard of for a professional level clarinet, that's quite expensive for someone who's also paying for all of the medical interventions that it takes to live.
Yes.
So, yes.
And yes, $10,000 is a lot of money. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, and then, I have support system because, as a researcher, I have a support system that has all of that, that there. And I have these resources that allow me to do the podcast and to be sponsored and all of those things that most people with disability don't have. Most people with disability have their family and their medical staff, and that's what they have.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. And again, thank you for what you do. You mentioned earlier that we are building a database of artists, and we are. And I will tell you, when I first started the organization, I did a Google search looking for artists with disabilities around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And on the east side of the US, there were 25. And 2 were in Georgia.
Okay.
The organization's the organization now is 15 years old, but at that time it was maybe 10. It was 10 years ago that I did that search. And now, because there's so many celebrities that identify,
Yes.
that's primarily what's, who's on the list. And there are other organizations that compile, lists of persons. We now, as an organization, are really deciding to lean into, because we can be all over the place, because we want employment for persons. Because we have a wage, and that's a whole nother thing in terms of the economics of the disability community. But we now are leaning into where we started, which is the talent shows, and then from the talent shows, having those elements that allow persons to improve their skill level.
And that's so important. I'm so excited.
Yes, we because it's the artist development piece.
Yes. And nobody has, I can't think of another organization that has that kind of artistic development and spent their efforts on people with disability. Usually able people tend to see any kind of things like that spent on people with disability as wasted. And, we can do it. We just need the same opportunities that everybody else has.
Yes. And I think it's really centered in and where the arts community can come and support with this is that's how the arts is viewed.
Yes, that's true.
A starving artist, you're going into arts, you're not going to make any money. It's a waste of your talent. You need to go in this, that, and the other. Well, I left a corporate career, your corporate career, because I was like, I'm not happy. And my happiness is worth whatever money there is out there. And yes, I'm happy. I'm able to, earn a livable wage. I'm able to go abroad and travel and be paid to do that. And so it's what you choose to do with your career. And it's, oh, wait, this is my talent.
Sure.
Gifting. And if everybody would lean into their gift, if everyone would lean into their gift, then we would be in such a better place.
Sure. But I'm sorry, I have a class following this one, so I'm going to have to wrap us up for tonight.
Awesome. Well, this has been a treat for me.
Yeah, I'm excited because we have, there are so many things that we have to discuss that people don't discuss.
Yes, I would love to come to your university and drive there and you and I just kind of sit down and have a conversation, and maybe even I would love to do a master class with your students and just kind of be there to encourage and inspire them to, yes, do more. Because I could go on and on. I've worked with students with cerebral palsy and encourage them, okay, if you can walk, you can stand on stage. You don't need to sit and perform. So things like that say, hey, you have your delivery, your performance, however you can. If you can't, yes, absolutely. But if you can, then do.
Sure. And I think that you and I can do a lot together, because I was thinking about the things that I could work with you on too. But yeah, so this brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you to Ms. Myrna Clayton for joining us to discuss community-based opportunities for musicians with disabilities. We hope you feel inspired, equipped, and ready to work with the disabled musicians in your community. If you learned anything here, please like and subscribe to our show and return on December 9th for our next episode. Until then, this is Dr. Tina Holmes Davis reminding you that small efforts create meaningful results.